comments, and I call the member for Wannon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. And I rise to talk on this motion, which commends all those who have helped and supported during the recent flooding, and also, I think, needs to call on governments, both local, state and federal, to ensure that they provide the much-needed support to local communities for their recovery. Deputy Speaker, the impact of the floods in my electorate was very similar to the impact of the floods in 2011. There have been some exceptions, however. For Skipton, for Lexton and for Lake Goldsmith in particular, what we saw in 2022 was very similar to what we saw in 2011. And the resilience of those communities and the way that they have dealt again with this flooding has been quite extraordinary. At times like this, communities, and I'm talking small communities, can go two ways. It can either be every man or woman for themselves, or a community coming together, working together to make sure that they deal together with the impact of the floods. And in Lake Goldsmith, in Lexton and in Skipton, that is what we've seen again. As a matter of fact, it is quite inspirational to be able to go to those communities, to meet with those who have been impacted, to meet with those who have helped and support them during their time of need, and to see the camaraderie, to see the bonds of friendship, and to see the way that this adversity is being dealt with collectively. On the front line, as with all floods, has been the SES, coordinating the response, making sure where preparation has been necessary, where preparation they've had time to do it, that it's been done in the most efficient and effective way possible. The sandbagging, the warning of residents, and in some instances, the ability to be able to tell residents that they need to leave their households. That is coordinated by the SES, but includes the CFA, includes local government and everyone else who is willing to play a part. But the coordination by the SES has been second to none. Not only when it comes to Skipton, Lexton and Lake Goldsmith, but also where there has been other flooding in my electorate, for instance in Aldansford, very near to Warrnambool, or in Hamilton where there was flash flooding. There we have seen the emergency services led by the SES and then local government and other community organisations coming together to make sure that the impact can be dealt with as best as we can deal with the impact of flooding. Flooding, though, does leave a real legacy, and that is one of the sad things that we need to continue to remember. And all levels of government, federal, state and local, need to remember this, because the water stays a lot longer than the help. The water stays, and the water in many instances will rot from the ground up houses. And we have to make sure that we're there to help and support those who deal with the long-lasting legacy of flood. Now, we did it in 2011. We didn't do all the amelioration, though, correctly. And we need to look at this now when it comes to these 2022 floods. Because if we don't get that right, then once again we're going to see the impact again when the next flood occurs. Now, whether that be ensuring that drains are properly cleared and cleaned, whether that's making sure that roadside vegetation, which is blocking drains, is cleared away, whether it is ensuring that levees are properly completed. All these things need to be looked at and dealt with, and we have to make sure that the preparation begins as soon as the clean-up is over in these communities. Can I also say that one of the lasting legacies, and we're seeing this more so in Victoria as a result of what didn't occur as it should have in 2011 and what hasn't occurred between then and 2022. And that is that where the rains and the flooding have damaged the roads, we have to fix them properly. It is no good. It is a waste of money just doing patch-up jobs. We have to do the job properly. And that means real investment in our road network and investment in doing the job properly. Now, Deputy Speaker, I'll give you a recent example that I've just been made aware of in my electorate, where we've had a brand new patch of road which has been impacted by a weather event that has left potholes where a farmer was able to put his foot into the hole and it went down as far as his hip. Now, that is not fixing a road properly. There is a front page of the Herald Sun today which says that the cost of repairing the Victorian regional and rural road network will be over $1 billion, over $1 billion. Now, I say to the government, you have allocated $2.2 billion to Dan Andrews's pet rail project, his urban rail link, which will probably be built sometime by 2050 maybe. It's going to cost, they seem to think, about $150 billion, so where the other $73 billion is going to come from, I'm not quite sure. That's the 50-50 component of the federal government. So, and this doesn't have a business case, it hasn't been to Infrastructure Australia. Take that money, that $2.2 billion that you have allocated in the budget to Dan Andrews's pet rail project and put it into Victoria's road network. You know that it needs it. And in doing that, also say to all the contractors that you use, we want you to do the job properly. We want you to take your time, put a proper foundation and a proper base into the roads and ensure that we're not going to need to patch them up, sometimes only weeks after they've been reopened. That would be something really practical which would leave a long-lasting legacy from this government to the people of regional and rural Victoria. So far, all they've done is rip money out of regional and rural Victoria. In the budget, they rip money out of regional and rural Victoria. This would be a way of saying, sorry, made a mistake, shouldn't have done that, we shouldn't have done what we normally do, and that's go after and target regional and rural Victoria. We're not going to do this. That's not our modus operandi under this new government, even though that's what we're seeing already. Take that $2.2 billion from Dan Andrews's pet rail project and put it into our road network. That single-handedly could make a huge difference to our communities, because at the moment, and this is my great fear, we've seen a loss of life as a result of these floods. But fortunately, through the great work of SES, CFA, local government and others, we've seen that loss of life minimalised. My real concern is we're going to see more loss of life as a result of the deteriorating road network right across rural and regional Victoria, and in particular in the seat of Wannon. So I say to the government, this has become a serious safety issue. It's no longer something that the Andrews government can just turn a blind eye to. It's not something that the federal government can turn a blind eye to. They need to fix these roads. Otherwise, we're going to see more people lose their lives on our roads than we saw in the floods.
I thank the member.